So, you continue with that.
So, we continue with the Vimalakirti Sutra. Ideally, traditionally, we begin hearing, contemplation, meditation, any kinds of, generally, any kinds of activities, especially spiritual activities, with proper conduct, proper and right motivation. And to do that, we also actually engage in some sort of rituals, such as invoking the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, taking refuge, generating the bodhicitta, and also practice the gesture of making offerings, because Dharma is so precious. We also then request to turn the will of the Dharma, basically to keep on requesting to teach. We are bypassing many of these this time for several reasons. First of all, I am not too confident to even categorize this as a proper teaching. So it's more or less conversation. So I don't know whether it's even worthy to be treated as a teaching. Nevertheless, since the contents of the teaching or the contents of the conversation that we are having is so profound, I'd like to remind, for those who are following the Buddha Dharma, I'd like to remind all of you to not just listen, but even simply be here with a proper motivation. That would make a big difference, because it is always intention and the motivation which will influence your rest of the endeavor. If you study these texts out of curiosity, you will have that kind of result. If you study these texts to increase your Buddhist knowledge, you will have corresponding result, hopefully. Then, if you have motivation of hearing these, in search for the truth, so that one will be liberated from all his delusions, not just oneself, so that in one way or another, we can liberate all others. With this as your motivation, if you listen, definitely the teaching will also have a different, it will sort of it will have that kind of effect. So yes, please, for those who are following the Buddha Dharma, try to have the right attitude, right motivation. Not just the listener to the teaching, but also the one who is expounding the teaching, in this case myself. It's important we do it with the right attitude, right motivation, and the right view. Briefly, for those who are beginner, if you're curious about right motivation, right attitude, briefly, if I mention some sort of a conclusion, some sort of a decision or conviction that no matter how orderly, attractive, blissful, profitable this worldly or samsaric life appears to be, ultimately you have to really come to a conclusion that the worldly life ultimately cannot be fixed. From the time we are born as a samsaric being. We are born permanently damaged. From the time we were born, we are the start of decay, start of falling apart has begun. So, some sort of conviction that no matter how much we try, we cannot really fix this worldly life. And this is a very, very important beginning to generate the right motivation. Then, quest for the liberation, as Vimalakirti has again and again pointed at us, the pursuit of the liberation should be not narrowed and limited to liberating only oneself, probably one's own friends or family, but the pursuit of liberation must be triggered by wishing to liberate all sentient beings. Then, as a Mahayana, since you are listening, hearing a Mahayana teaching, you then have to have really one very important attitude, which is the attitude, sort of the boundless attitude. You really have to not trust the zone that you live in. You have to constantly remind yourself you are frogs from the well, that you have never traveled outside from this well. You may think the well is like infinite as ocean, but you are always that limited frog. So develop sort of a skepticism, if you have any, which I'm sure you do. We all do, which is important. But be skeptical towards your perception, your decision, your limitation, especially if you finish PhD or master's degree or something. Because logic and rational is logic and rational is the highway of becoming the perfect idiot. So be always long to be grand, long to be vast, think vast, see vast. You know, we use the words like infinite, all, don't you? All are welcome. Infinite. It's very long. We always use these words. Doesn't mean much. But as a Mahayana student, try to learn to have some sort of a meaning to this. Even though you may not be able to express it, but try to learn, what do you mean by infinite? Not to just sit in the well, but really think big. And this is absolutely important. It is because of this, many of the Mahayana and the Tantrayanas, sadhanas, pujas, practices, we always, there's a certain preparatory, or what do you call it, prerequisite practices we do. And one of them is called Tsemeshi. I think loosely translated as four immeasurable thoughts. Immeasurable. Tsemeva. It's really important. Like immeasurable. That attitude is important. Like, in a very crude way, if I put it in a very crude way, pursuit of enlightenment, pursuit of liberation should never have that stain of thinking one day is going to end. As a bodhisattva, you are not looking for end. You should, if you have to look at something, you have to look at endlessness. Endless job you should have. Endless tasks. Sort of the endlessness. And this has to come with a grand view grand view, grand attitude, big, big vision. Big vision is so important. This is what, I'm sure many of you are tired of hearing this from me again and again. I tell my friends, Tibetans, Bhutans, I tell this again and again. Like American forefathers, when they were planning New York City, they had a grand vision. They planned that city 150 years, 40 years before, and they planned a big Central Park. I'm sure there were some narrow-minded people. Why are we wasting these acres and acres of land? And it is good now. Probably already small. The grand picture, grand view. Like a grand picture is what you need. Even if it requires for you to go to somewhere like Egypt or Ethiopia or Iraq or, I don't know, Gorakhpur or Bihar, even if it requires you go there to wait for a whole life to talk to one person for 10 minutes, you should be ready to do it. Just 10 minutes. You need to talk to some weird person. Probably not even a nice conversation, but be it. That is the kind of the attitude that you should have. This is really important. I was, just recently practicing Vajrayogini, which comes from the Sakya tradition. And then at the end we do prayers. And towards the end of the prayer there's a very beautiful prayer, so inspiring. The prayer is, may I from now till enlightenment, may I never ever reborn as a man. I don't know, I'm sure you women don't know. You don't appreciate how I feel. So it's like, okay, if this prayer comes true, bye-bye, what masculine, okay, so do without aftershave, all sorts of details you can think. Never ever to be married till enlightenment. This kind of aspirations you find in the body, in the Mahayana and in the Tantrayana. Because these prayers come from, not from the well, it comes from the ocean, the grand attitude, the grand view. So this, even to listen to Vimalakirti Sutra and have conversations, you need a grand, attitude. And I'd just like to sort of mention this briefly this morning, to really it's like, what do you call it? Prep talk. Prep talk. I don't know. I'm not so good with this kind of thing, but anyway, that's the prep talk. So now let's go to the text. Now, there's something quite interesting. Vimalakirti Sutra really is a sutra about sickness. Do you know that? Sickness, ailment. Because our hero is not well, remember? Talkative, the sharp, this guy. It's all revolving around him being not well and everybody needing to ask him, how are you? And it's all about that, remember? Now this is an important, by the way, I was having conversation with somebody. You know, first of all, this is a Mahayana Sutras, and many of the Mahayana Sutras are like this. Like, for instance, like Lalita Vistara Sutra is also like a Mahayana Sutra. And in Tibetan we call it Jachir Rolbindo, Jachir Rolba, which is translated in English as a play in full. I think it's a beautiful title, Play in Full. And you know what's the content of the Lalita Vistara Sutra? It's the life of the Buddha. So, right from the title we know, it's sort of, if I put it crudely, the Lalita Vistara Sutra, the title almost saying that, it's not really happening, it's just a game. It's a play. But it's kind of a full, it's a full game. Nevertheless, it's just a game. It's not really happening. This, by the way, is the title of autobiography of Buddha. How fascinating. He calls his own biography not really happening. It's a game, but it's a full game. Vimalakirti Sutra is similar. There's a lot of games here. I'm not doing justice by, first of all, skipping a lot, because I'm lazy. The culprit of last night's not being able to read a little bit and not being able to prepare today is Game of Thrones. Season 1, episode 1, 2, 3, 4. But the details missing a lot, and it's a really difficult to translate also. But I think I mentioned yesterday, remember? Yeah, Shariputra had a doubt, and remember I've said that even that doubt is a blessing of the Buddha. That's why he had a doubt. This indicates, there's a lot of like that. So what I'm saying is actually, there is a big engine, sort of central engine, that's really doing all the remote control. In other words, don't think that these Ananda, Shariputra, Maitreya, they're some dumb people who, don't know these things. You understand? The conversations, the events that has happened here, is trying to portray, trying to teach us, trying to express us something that is so difficult to express, which is, as I've explained yesterday to Ajir, how do you explain nothing happening and everything happening, both happening together? How do you explain that? How do you explain seemingly two opposite things happening exactly together, and not only that, not only happening together, in fact it's not even together, it's a one thing. And this is where the Mahayana excels. And I always tell my Indian friends, this is a gift from the Indians, really. This is India's gift. This non-duality, this technique, years, centuries of language, metaphor, examples, phrases, poetry, stories, paintings. Remember I told this before, like Ganesha riding a mouse, smallest animal, being ridden by the biggest animal. Stuff like that, trying to explain us things that cannot be explained. So you have to really get used to this kind of I guess culture or method. Okay. How going to put legends in Sanskrit? Okay, so just one or two more. Okay, this one is a merchant's son. If you know the name, just tell me in Sanskrit. Legjin is in Tibetan, sort of Siddhartha? Yeah? Siddhartha. Okay. So Buddha asked him to go and ask for well-being of Vimalakirti, who of course would again refused. And because he's a, rich man's son, very rich, I think we are talking about really, really rich. In some of the Sutras describes about these rich people, making offerings to, their masters with gold, covering the whole area, so on and so forth. But anyway, this Siddhartha was, and I think even today, in many Indian part of India seems to have this culture. The wealthy families have the tradition, I guess yearlies, monthlies probably, they make offerings to poor and monks, renouncers. What do you call it?
It's part of the yagi.
Yagi?
Yeah, yagi.
What? Yagi?
Yeah, it's like a
Dhan. Offering. So he was doing that, and he was making a lot of offerings to a lot of people, and then at that time Vimalakirti arrives and say, criticize him, and what are you doing? You are not performing a real generosity here. What's the point of doing, this kind of practicing this kind of generosity? You should give the truth. Giving the truth is the supreme generosity. You should give love, compassion, joy, equanimity. So on and so forth. And anyway, he told this to Siddhartha, and Siddhartha, I think he was a very, receptive disciple. So he was very impressed. And after Vimalakirti said this, and this is the point that I just want to extract, Siddhartha had all his personal ornament, like jewels and pearl. He took out all of this and he offered to Vimalakirti. First Vimalakirti said, what would I do with this? He refused to accept. But then Siddhartha said, do whatever you like, I'm offering you. And this is something that I just wanted to extract. Vimalakirti cut the garlands of pearl into two halves, and he offered one to the Buddhas, the other one he offered to there was one beggar, like detested by everyone, despised by everyone. He offered equal amount to the Buddha and this beggar, and gave long sermon about field of merit. This is another important teaching. When we talk about accumulation of merit, often we think about accumulating merit only through making offerings to the Buddhas and sublime beings. But Vimalakirti making a big point about how sentient beings are equally important field of merit. Okay, anyway, so that's the, after that, that's the last person actually. Buddha asked, and the second last. So then Buddha asked Manjushri, okay, you go. And then Manjushri said, well, this guy, Vimalakirti, he is really accomplished. He had a long list of praise to the Vimalakirti. Among the many, many praises that he made of Vimalakirti, one of them, for instance, every one of them are very unique. One of them, for instance, if I just extract, said, this Vimalakirti is so smart, he is so special. Something, one book about Tavajra, this happens, this is found in other sutras also, that he actually knows how another being, when they use their sense to look at things, hear things, taste things, he actually knows how this sentient being is experiencing that object. That's a big thing. Like, you can only look at somebody eating macaroni or a chicken curry or something like that, and then imagine imagine some sort of a taste, but that taste is usually based on your own experience, never the direct experience. Vimalakirti actually can tell. It's almost like using others' sense and sense objects directly without needing to refer. So this is just one of the praises. Anyway, Manjushri said, he's very smart, he's grand, but with the blessing of the Buddha, I shall go. And then everybody got so excited. And everybody said, let us all go, watch these two. This has to be something. So many people, everybody wanted to follow. So then the journey began. Now, Vimalakirti, who is supposedly sick, I think he knew Manjushri with the entourage, big entourage is coming. So then he went, okay. He's going to he thought, okay, I am going to make my house empty. So he made everything disappear, especially the seeds. And this is very important, just keep in mind. Only seat or the bed is the bed that Vimalakirti himself is lying down, supposedly sick. And no attendants, no bodyguards, nobody. Just in this big palace, only Vimalakirti lying down in a bed. Manjushri with a big entourage arrived. And I have to say, really even me, I'm so distracted, my mind really doesn't enter into the Dharma. My mind is always so into something kind of materialistic things, so much distractions. I just have to look at, I don't know, like Facebook. I have to, I love, looking at Amazon. Like recently I've been listening to Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things probably for the 4th time or something. Like so much distractions, and then of course last night Game of Thrones. But even me, and that's saying a lot, I have to say, there were a few moments that conversation between Vimalakirti and Manjushri managing to compete Game of Thrones. Because these two guys, their conversation is just so amazing. But me, I would say the Game of Thrones ended up distracting me much more, which is very sad. But these two, their conversation, and their conversation is about sickness. Because Manjushri says, hey, I'm here, how are you? So what are you? So when did you catch this sickness? What are you sick with? What's wrong? And, can you move here? Can you move there? Can you lift your hand? I guess all of that kind of conversation. So that's, basically, okay, to be precise, to be very short, basically Manjushri begins with, how are you? What are you sick with? Now, the conversations about sickness, ailment, is the, what do you call it? Then they go through lengthy conversation about what is sickness. Okay, just few I'm extracting. To the question, how did you catch this sickness? Okay, how come you are sick? And for how long and all that? And many questions. Okay, when do you think you'll get better? I don't know why he even asked this. Okay. Okay, answers. It's just so brilliant. It's mind-boggling, I'm telling you. He said, I don't think I'll ever get better, basically. Because he said, as long as there is a craving, there is sipa, is like samsara, sipa, Sipa comes from color. Existence. God is beautiful. Second, craving, Sipa. Existence, right? Existence.
Samsara.
Samsara, existence. Okay, anyway, as long as there is a craving, there is going to be existence. Okay, let me define the existence. Existence, broadly speaking, is the samsara. It's such a beautiful word, sipa in Tibetan. Existence. It's like I don't know. It's a bit like, who was it? Which Western philosopher? I am, therefore, I think.
Therefore I
What?
am.
You are therefore I am.
You are therefore I am. And
I
that,
think.
but when you say somebody said that, I think therefore. Yeah, I think therefore I am. It's similar here. You think. It's a bit like that. I'm just giving you this as an example. When you crave, what you are craving gets. I'm not saying that your wish will come true. I'm not saying that. What you are craving, you project something, and that projection is the existence. Basically, the whole samsara. The whole samsara, samsaric existence. Sometimes we use that word. So, Vimalakirti's answer is, as long as there is a craving, there is a samsara. And as long as there is a samsaric beings, I will always be sick. What an amazing thing to say. He's not going to get better. When all sentient beings are free from ailment, I will also be there better. Remember, I was talking about big vision. This is it. He's talking about the big vision. Okay, this is very big. This is the main body. Their conversation, of course. Okay, one other question. Manjushri asked, how did you catch this disease? How did you catch this sickness? Brilliant answer. Compassion. Made me sick. The bodhisattvas are sick because of compassion. Manjushri looks right and left. What happened, Why is everything so empty? Where did everybody go? What happened to, like tables and, like... There's a lengthy conversations about see, Manjushri's question is, what happened to your things? Where did they disappear? What happened to your nurse? Don't you have nurses? Vimalakirti. Buddha fields are always empty. Manjushri, empty what? Vimalakirti, empty of emptiness. Empty of emptiness. Manjushri. How can empty be empty? Sort of, I'm not translating that. Good to talk on the tongue, empty of emptiness or emptiness is thinking that emptiness is emptiness. To be empty of that. Now we are really going to the nitty-gritty, so really meticulously deconstructing every concept. That was just so brilliant, just amazing. And then one of the questions is, Chimda. This is such a nice thing to say. It's such a chimda. It's like, I don't know how to really translate this in a very nice way. It's like, chimda basically means householders, right? But I think here it's almost a very affectionate way, sort of, someone who is patron, you are, like Jimda, Chimda, like the sponsor, patron, you are supporter. So they usually have that sort of title of someone who helps you. So Manjushri affectionately, Chimda, sponsor, patron. What? Like, where is emptiness? Where would one find emptiness? What is emptiness, basically? Answer? Fantastic. If you want to find emptiness, you will find emptiness within 62 wrong views. There you will find emptiness. What a brilliant thing to say. This will confuse you probably, but this is so important. This one is quoted in the Tantra. Okay, Manjushri challenges him. Where does this 62 wrong views come from? They come from they arise from. I have to sort of define this a little bit because I don't know how to translate this. They arise as a display, as a vibration, as a hue, as a mood of quality of the Tathagatas. Instead of saying they come from some pit hole, so smelly dungeon or something like that, the source of the wrong view is redirected towards the most sublime thing. This is actually very much quoted in the Vajrayana. Manjushri. And, and you should just keep on asking for the benefit of people like us, I guess. And where's your, attendance? Don't you have a helper? Do something, all the demons and all those who disturb me, they are my attendants. lengthy discussions about what is sickness. Clinging to the self, idea of self. Idea of self, clinging to that idea of self. Next, thinking that this is mine, possession. These are sickness. Mimic person, mimic non-conceptual, non-conceptual. Non-conceptual, non-referential. Basically, not having mimic, but non-referential. Reference, as long as there is a reference, it is a sickness, it is an ailment. I'm summarizing this now. Therefore, path, goal, penance, one-pointed concentration, all this is an ailment. To think that there is something to extract, or what do you call it, extract or take out, delete, get rid of, purify, is an ailment. To think that there is something to adopt, acquire, achieve, accumulate, is an ailment. To think, to think that there is a self, let's say, that is doing the compassion, having the compassion, and to think that there is a sentient being to whom you have compassion towards. Basically, the subjective and objective compassion is an ailment. Everything is an ailment, by the way. Everything. Anything that is not any reference or any movement or any kind of mind stream that takes you away from the truth is an ailment. Then also there's one point. But to even think that they are ailment is ailment. To even think they are ailment is an ailment. Therefore, to even think that there is a remedy to cure them is an ailment. Before the break, since this is sort of really kind of abstract, I guess, especially for those who are new, I will let you ask questions, so let me just finish this. Yeah. To have, okay, so we can stop here just before this. To have the notion that there's a liberation, liberation, longing for liberation. To have the longing for liberation, therefore thinking there is something that is binding you. Both are ailment. Okay, ask me now something whatever is more related to this, if it is possible, because we haven't finished. Just for a few minutes. Do you have a mic? Do you have a, if you don't, it's okay. Here, this lady.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Actually, I have two questions. I guess they're kind of tied together, one from yesterday and one inspired by today's talk. So one question is, given that I have this very practical and utilitarian culture that I come from, and it's been also shown that actually when Buddhism entered into China, our ancestors just took whatever we think is practical and useful, and a lot of the other things we didn't take. So one thing is, like, given that cultural background that I come from, what is the catalyst, the shortcut, like we talked about yesterday, that will help to, we don't have an elephant, we don't grow up with having an elephant, standing on our bat or our mouth. What is the shortcut, to really expand our mind? And actually this tied up with the question yesterday about the weed. When you talk about the weed, I was like, what about after the weed? How can I get rid of the weed? Can you get me there? But I guess after all, our motivation is liberation, but thinking of liberation is an album. It's mind-boggling.
I used to think, it is a very important point. I used to also think, not knowing enough Chinese culture, and Chinese history, still not knowing, I used to think like this, maybe the practicality, the commonsensical Chinese, the Chinese, their common sense, the veneration towards, veneration towards common sense, maybe hijacking the wisdom of it. That's how I used to think, but I'm changing my mind a bit. I don't know how to put this properly, but if you can ask me these questions, maybe in 2 years' time, probably I can answer you better. But it's a bit like, okay, again, let me put it in a very strange way. I have noticed, I'm not talking about the current right now, okay? Just, reading some books and just going through, I'm sort of noticed, probably, it is my projection, that Chinese, within the Chinese culture or whatever, they do a lot of stupid things, which is good. You know what I'm talking about? Stupid things like tea. Oh God, it's the most stupid thing in many ways. Some dead leaf, and make big fuss about this dead leaf. Dry, dead leaves, giving all kinds of names. And going on and on, I was pouring from one cup to another cup, smelling, showing, like this, like that. And they really go through. Those are important.
On the parasols we use in rituals, have you seen those?
Yes, they're very important. And I think these are some of the catalysts. If you are talking about it, I think when Chinese stop drinking tea properly, probably Buddhism will have a bit of a difficulty. You understand? No, I'm serious. Yeah, I'm trying. I don't know how to sort of articulate this properly, but this, I think I used to say, doing uselessness. Okay, of course, but even India now is very attracted to be useful. Thanks to their old habit, in a way, they are not really managing to do it. But those uselessness, you know, India used to, and China used to have so many, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but like somewhere, nowhere in the middle, you know, like big gate. India also have this like big, you know, gates. Stuff like that. I think those can be used as a catalyst, if that's what you are talking about. Like, yeah, the practicality should almost be considered as one of the emotion now. You know, desire, anger, jealousy, pride, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, and then maybe practicality. Because that's an issue, that's a pain, and that's pain, and it's also at least that's a pain or a cause of a pain, and it's going to be difficult to get rid of because it's practical. because when you flush the toilet, it really works. And I don't want to get rid of that. Many times it's good. I hope you didn't misunderstand about the tea thing. I'm not disrespecting it. In fact, other way around. I do respect it a lot. In fact, having this, reading this somewhere, I don't know, I forgot there's some article there. Actually, I ended up, it's a bit like this, if you watch too much, British spy movies, like especially with Alec Guinness in it, you end up kind of liking to drink gin and tonic. they always drink this gin and tonic, so you feel like doing the same. So, after reading that, I have actually, even though I never know which tea is which, I kind of appreciate this much more. And if correct me if I'm wrong, I think the whole tea business in China, and the tea ceremony, the cup, all that ritual has probably quite a big Zen influence. Especially in Japan, definitely. Japanese tea ceremony. Yeah. I don't know why we have to do this. Like we have to turn the cup, do this, do that. And those are important. They can be catalysts. They can be a bit of the thing that Ajir and we discussed yesterday. Okay, any other questions regarding the...
Yes, okay. Could you please, I didn't understand or hear it correctly, the part about when he mentioned the 62 elements coming from wrong views coming from the mood of the Tagapath.
As mood, those are just my way of trying to explain. This is really opening the can of stuff. If you talk about the source of ignorance, first of all, okay, put it this way, the ignorance that we so detest, remember we talked about yesterday also, is actually none other than the wisdom. Remember? 1 kilo of jealousy, 1 kilo of wisdom. So, have that as your background. Then, when the question is asked, where does the ignorance come from? Then, easily we can say it comes from, of course, the phrase, it comes from, is a bit misleading, but this is how we have to always talk as a deluded human being. So, in the Tantra especially, they use this a lot, that all our emotions are basically a display of the wisdom. Like a sun and the rays of the sun. That's, yeah, he's so integrated, but not as explicit as in the Tantra. Remember, I think I've said yesterday also, I mentioned this, like lotus will not be born in a clean place. Lotus? If it is very clean and dry, no lotus. Muddy, dirt, lotus. That, we're talking about that basically. Because in the earlier conversation, we have developed ailment, the concept of ailment. So a certain amount of detest or revulsion towards the ailment has been established. And then suddenly it twists. Where does the ailment come from? It actually comes from the antidote itself. That's the twist. And this is mentioned also in the Uttara Tantra and many other texts that, you know, like when we talk about antidote, solution, the biggest solution in Buddhism, in the Mahayana Buddhism, biggest solution for all your problems of emotion is the Tathagata Dharma itself. That is the solution. That you already have it. You don't even have to look for it. Okay? Whoever has the mic, please.
Rinpoche, thank you for the teaching. I just want to continue the question following that lady. As a Chinese, and also as you mentioned, we are all striving to be practical at this moment. I'm afraid we have to continue like that. So my question is, I'm afraid this is not avoidable. Could you give us some practical advices on how to be practical, but at the same time with some of emptiness, please? Thank you.
Be reluctant practicalist. Is there a practicalist? Is there a word? Practicalist. Be a reluctant practicalist. That's, we call it a renouncement. You understand? Reluctant practicalist. Is that such English word? No. In English is pragmatist. Yes, be a reluctant pragmatist. Then you are okay. So please don't stop drinking tea with the elaborated fashion. What else?
So good morning. I want to know about the ailment. You said to talk about ailment is an ailment.
One of them, but I think it's good to think about ailment as a reference. Then you will understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, reference is an ailment.
Okay, reference is an ailment.
Yes.
And ailment should not be cured. To think of curing it
is also an ailment. Yes.
So
you are talking to an impossible patient, basically. Talking to Vimalakirti. Imagine being a doctor there.
oh.
You asked me to remind you yesterday, quickly. Yeah, the mundane things.
Okay.
Mundane benefits.
Can we do a little bit later? Okay. I know it's a little bit early, but I don't know, somehow I overdrank. So cause and condition still rules my existence at the moment. So yes.